Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
the 5
Like,
zone people, and then the culled out 24.
Yes, ma'am. Like you said, we need to inform well in advance with the first information, second
Yeah, you
information.
did all that, I
Yes, ma'am.
noticed. But
So like
all
that, I
of
have
them are
informed.
there in it, like those who were very enthusiastic, like Satya and Anamika, and there were
Yes, ma'am.
quite a
Yes, ma'am.
few who were very enthusiastic in the beginning. But today I'm not finding them in the this
Yes, ma'am. So in
responded.
our group, IIRN group, already I had sent the reminder today at 2 o'clock, and they
Hmm.
had reciprocated that they will be joining.
Okay, maybe commuting to back home right now. Many of them
Yes.
would be office finishes at 5:30, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So some may be commuting. Probably later we'll, with the consensus of everyone, we can push it to 7ish, 7:30, something like that, where they would have gone home and joined with a cup of tea. Something like that. We'll have to work on it. Not I'm not saying that be it, but we have to find out from the convenient
Actually,
timing from our. This I understand is also with everybody's consent that came to the 6 o'clock time, isn't it, Rajesh?
yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I don't know.
Actually,
Maybe.
I was thinking to change the time today, but because of no power available,
Mm, mm.
that's why I thought let us stick to 6 o'clock.
Many are must be going home. All the national institutes and also other places. 5:30 we close, right? So that could be a reason that, like for instance, if I want to talk to Shilpa, Nivedita, and all, they prefer a 7 o'clock. They say that 5:30 to 7 time, anytime they'll be commuting. So they like to go home and then talk about things. So from that, I am making this point that maybe they are traveling.
Jayanti ma'am, good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. Oh, now you are not muted anymore. Yeah. First when I spoke to you, I found you muted. How are you doing?
Ma'am, fine. I'm fine. And
Very
you
good.
you were right, ma'am. 5:30 we finished. I somehow rushed home, and I was
Mm.
just sipping a cup of tea, as you said.
Mhm. Okay. All national institutes I know are 5:30 closing, but many people don't leave at 5:30. They take it even longer to stay
Um,
back. I've caught Rajesh at 7:30 and 8 in the office. So also Himanshu, 11 in the night,
yes,
sitting
yes.
in the office. Such things happen. So,
Okay.
yeah, but the evenings are convenient when we have members from the western part of the world.
Or next meeting, we will also try to change the day, like Saturday evenings.
Saturday, usually people take off, no? Why bring academics on Saturday evenings? Many may not like it. Friday evening, yes, because next day is off. Especially in other countries, I have found when I was a student in 1978, 79, if I'm sitting with some academic work on a Friday evening or Saturday, even Friday evening, if you are sitting with the book, you are looked at like you are some odd character. How can you be sitting with books on a Friday evening? And all over they'll have posters. Thank God Friday is coming. A kind of posters everywhere. So, but we are not like that in India. So we merge work with holiday and holiday with work. That is where we make a mistake. Also, many a time. Many people may not be happy with the Saturday. I don't know. It's all my personal opinion. We need to take a consensus on this. What will be a good day and timing from everybody. Yeah.
Good evening, ma'am, Janti ma'am, and everyone else.
Oh, good
Neelam ji,
evening, Neelam ji. Neelam ji, namaskar ji. How are you? Good evening.
Good evening. I thought everybody is talking, so why not I?
We're listening. Okay. What do you think of the timing, ma'am?
Yes, people may be thinking also on these lines. Standing, it does suit me because I'm not working, but people who
Yeah.
are working, that there would be have better
Yeah.
explain things.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm. So that's why I was telling Dr. Rajesh that we go by consensus of majority of
Yeah,
our
that's good.
participants. Yeah. And we will fit in ourselves. Mm.
I am I'm just attending classes of CWSN. So
Mm.
today I
Okay.
had 2 classes. So I thought now I must join here also. That would be better.
Okay. Okay.
Richard sir, over to you, sir.
Yeah, I think perhaps we should start, don't you? Okay. Okay, so welcome everybody. Thank you for joining this second seminar in the series for the India Inclusion Research Network. I'm delighted to have you with us. I've no doubt others may well join as we go along, but this is, as you probably know, is the second of the seminars that we've done in this series, where we're trying to get people to speak about the research they're doing, maybe focused on some aspects of the methodology, and to share their experiences with everybody who wishes to attend. What we'll do is we will have the presentation, and then at the end, an opportunity for people to ask questions and engage with the speaker. So today we're very pleased to welcome Dr. Ratika Malkani. Dr. Malkani, who hails from Mumbai, or Bombay as I know she still prefers to call it, and has been doing a lot of interesting research recently. I know she's been engaged in some research for a local authority here in England, looking at provision for young people leaving schools, and she's also been doing some research around the area of law in England, law for undergraduate students. But today she's going to speak about some research which she conducted in Maharashtra state with a tribal community. A very unique study, some of which has been reported in academic journals and in book chapters. So I'm delighted to welcome Ratika and to ask her to speak to us for the rest of this session. So thank you, Ratika, and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. So for this session, Rajesh, can I have access to the slides so I can move them up and down?
You have to present it from your side, ma'am.
I don't.
Google doesn't give the option of accessing from others. This one, if you put it in,
so I have
you can
to
present it.
upload it again.
You have to keep your presentation in your desktop.
Okay.
And
all right.
keep it open, and then you present it.
Okay. All right. So now, can everybody see this, or is it only on my side?
No, we can't see it at the moment, Ratika.
Rajesh, you had the presentation on the side, which I sent it to you. So will you move the slides, because I haven't? I have my. Would that be possible? Can we move on to the first slide, Rajesh? Yeah, thank you. So today's session is, we will be concentrating on the methods of research and consider the nature of research and the ways in which methods of research can be developed. Also, I'll be using the study which I have done, a case study research in, like Richard said, in a rural community of Maharashtra in India. And I will explain how I use the research methods for my study. So it will give you an example of how to use the methods in a case study setting for a qualitative method. But before that, we'll go through the different Can we move on to the next slide, Rajesh? So I'll be concentrating on the methods of research. There are basically 3 types of methods of research. One is quantitative method, then there is qualitative method, and the third one is the mixed method research, which uses both the quantitative and qualitative. In quantitative method, it allows you to systematically measure variables and test the hypothesis, and it deals with numbers and statistics. When it comes to qualitative method, these are usually this method is usually used for social research, and it is more committed to social justice, respect for the individual, and to bring about some change. And here, qualitative researchers are more interested in gathering not just facts, but also to gain an understanding of the subject they're trying to research. And the most important part in qualitative research is that it recognizes that interpreting the data is the most challenging aspect of the research because it's very subjective. So how you interpret the data is very, very important. And then the third method is the mixed method research, and it combines both qualitative and quantitative data in one single study. When you use mixed method, it recognizes that both qualitative and quantitative data collection approaches are useful, but it tends to favor the qualitative approach more. Now, we can go on to the details of, I'll explain in detail each one. So the first is the comparison between qualitative and quantitative methods. In qualitative, it's more text-based. Quantitative methods are number-based. It's more, it's less in-depth, but and the types of questions are limited. It's not very probing. It's usually you have a questionnaire where the answers are limited answers. For example, you can have a rating scale or a closed question on a questionnaire, which would generate data which are usually have yes or no answers, and then you can have numerical data which can be put into categories. So that's how the quantitative data works. The method limits the possible ways in which a research participant can react to and express appropriate social behavior, because it's very fixed. The responses are very fixed. The fixed options are there. So the findings are therefore likely to be context-bound and simply a reflection of the assumptions which the researcher brings to the investigation. So, and the analysis on in the quantitative method is statistical. The statistics help to turn the quantitative data into useful information to help with decision making. We can use statistics to summarize the data and describe patterns, relationships, and connections. So basically, the knowledge is very objective in quantitative data, and it's hard data which provides reliability, and evidence is measured, and the natural and the social world can be viewed in the same way. But for this particular session, we are going to concentrate more on qualitative methods, because that's what I have used for my study in India. And this study, a qualitative study, it was a case study, and in qualitative methods, you usually the data is more text-based. There's a lot of it's in-depth information on few cases, so the sample size is limited. And you use the respondents can have structured and semi-structured response options. So you have interviews which are semi-structured, where it gives them an option to to give responses which can differ from one participant to the others. And there are no statistical tests when it comes to qualitative data. Now, I will go into details of qualitative methods. Before we go on to that, I'll explain what the mixed method approach is. So the mixed method approach is a study that combines qualitative and quantitative data collection and analysis in one study. So individually, these approaches can answer different questions, like, so combining them can provide you with more in-depth findings. You can use a bigger sample for quantitative data and then narrow it down to a few people, and then use quantitative method approaches to answer questions in depth, in detail. So in general, quantitative data is better at answering questions like what is the effect of your research, and qualitative data can show you how and why you got those results. So that's why many researchers use a mixed method approach, which it has the advantages of both quantitative and qualitative. Can we move on to the next slide? So here we are going to be focusing in this session more on qualitative research. And qualitative researchers are more concerned with actually understanding the reality of the social situations. So, which can include, research on teaching, on learning, and all those factors that have an impact on teaching and learning. It also acknowledges that reality is subjective and open to interpretation by individuals. So that's why qualitative research is also known as interpretivism, because basically researchers have to interpret interpret the subject, the data that they have collected. And it therefore requires verifications in order to support trustworthy interpretation. So you have to verify it with different methods. And like, you could have observations, you could have interviews, and then you verify it, you triangulate the data so that your data is more trustworthy and it can be verified. Qualitative researchers study things. So basically, they're studying people and their thoughts in their natural settings. And so as to have an attempt to make sense of or to understand the phenomena in terms of the meanings people bring to them. So knowledge is subjective. That's the first thing that comes out of qualitative research. And the meaning is constructed. The evidence needs to be interpreted and verified. And the natural and the social world are different. So that is important to understand when you're doing the qualitative research. And the main purpose of qualitative study is to understand the critical issue or the situation in a specific location, to understand what is common and what is exceptional when you're doing your study, and to provide examples of what happens and what is possible within a context that you're studying. Can we move on to the next one? So qualitative research involves the studied use and collection of variety of materials. So you could, sorry, Rajesh, I've lost the slides.
Yes, ma'am, it has been displayed.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, I've got it now. So qualitative research is a process, and it involves the studied use and collection of variety of materials. Like, you could have case study, personal experience, you can have the life story, the interview, you can observe things, you can visual text that describe routine, You can watch the problematic moments and meanings in individuals' lives. You can deploy a wide range of interconnected methods, hoping always to get a better fix on the subject matter at hand. So it's not usually restricted to only one way of collecting data. You don't have to just do interviews or observe or look at the uh, um, look at texts or theories. You have to use all the methods combined together to get to verify your data and to get a better understanding of what you're studying. As a process in qualitative research, there are three main things that are involved. First is the theory, and then is the method of your data collection, and then how you analyze that method. And all these three, the theory, method, and analysis, are interconnected, and they define the qualitative research process. So to go on to the first one, which is the theory, what the theory in qualitative research, you use the existing theory. You look up a theory and you look at the existing theory, which shapes the approach which you are going to adopt when you do your research process, and also to the aspects of data analysis. So qualitative research can produce theory that explains or improves the understanding of the issue. This process can reveal the complexity of the phenomena you're trying to study and give you an in-depth understanding of one of the important benefits of, and that is one of the most important benefits of qualitative research. So when you use a theory, it also helps you to design the research questions. You can use it as a guide to select relevant data, interpret the data, and propose explanations of causes or influences on the sample that you are studying. So when you look at it, also helps you. It involves predicting a pattern of outcomes based on theory propositions to explain what you expect to find. So it helps you to match the pattern. So qualitative researchers rely very heavily on theories drawn from social sciences and humanities as it guides their research process and it clarifies their findings. So for example, for my research, I use the capability approach theory by Amartya Sen and Martha Nussbaum. And Amartya Sen is an economist and Martha Nussbaum is an ethnographer and a sociologist. So together, they have proposed a specific approach for understanding the influence that living in disadvantaged situations can have on individuals and communities. And this theory of capability approach really fitted well with my research because it was aimed at understanding the challenges that scheduled caste and scheduled tribe communities face in trying to achieve their educational goals. So this really helped me to understand the research, that understand the data I was collecting. It also helped me to build to explain to actually make me understand what I was collecting, and when I was analyzing it, how it would help me to analyze the data. So theory is very important in that aspect, that it really helps you understand what you're collecting and how to interpret it. So now we're going on to the methods of data collection. So the methods I used for my qualitative research was observations and document analysis and interviews. I did not actually use questionnaire survey, but that can also be used if you combine qualitative and quantitative data together and you have a mixed method, then you can use questionnaire surveys too. But for mine, because my sample size was very limited and I wanted to do a very in-depth study, I used interviews, which were mainly semi-structured interviews. And I observed the students in their academic setting as well as outside of school settings, in casual settings, and lots of document analysis which I had access to in the school. So you have to recognize when you employ different methods. Rajesh, can you go back to the previous slide, please? So when you employ your different methods of data collection, you have to recognize that different individuals provide different perspectives. And the researcher has to look for verification through a multi-methods approach. And this is how you can increase the trustworthiness of your research. So studies are generally constructed on the basis of combining a number of qualitative research data collection methods, which are mentioned here. And the case studies may also be developed on the basis of combination of these methods so that you can triangulate your data. Because just one source may not be valid enough, will not give you the trustworthiness. Like, for example, when I was collecting my data, when I was having an interview with the parents, they said that, when I asked them the question about, do children do any work outside of school once they come home, any work? And most of the parents said no, that the children don't do any physical work once they are out of school at home. They don't have any responsibilities, work responsibilities. But then when I went to observe them in their home setting, I realized that that was not true, because the minute the children came home, they changed immediately, and they had a lot of responsibilities, like looking after their siblings or taking care of the cattle going out or collecting water and things like that. So that's why it's so important to triangulate your data rather than just depend on one method of collecting data. And it also helps you to identify what is common and what is exceptional. So the typical and the rare, it helps you understand that better. And overall, I think when you use different methods of collecting data, it increases the researcher's understanding of the case, and it allows a detailed interpretation of the data to be made. So it is very important that we use different methods of collecting data, not just one. Can we go on to the next slide, please? So for my research, just to give you a background on my research, it is based on first generation learners. And this is basically students who are the first in their family to go to school and receive a formal education. The parents of these children have no academic background or formal education at any level. So this definitely leaves the students at a disadvantage, because a significant part of educational process actually occurs at home. And when you look at children who are more at risk of exclusion in the Indian context, it's usually children who belong to scheduled tribe or scheduled caste communities, children who migrate from rural to urban areas for, when the parents are looking for work opportunities, children who belong to poorer socioeconomic backgrounds, children who come from rural communities, and also girl students. So for my research, I was concentrating on first generation learners, and most first generation learners usually belong to scheduled caste and scheduled tribe communities. And previous research has shown that it is this cohort of children who are the first generation learner who turn out to be the largest number of dropouts at all levels of education. So this has been proved by previous research. And therefore, the purpose of my study was to explore this dilemma from the perspective of children themselves, and to understand the many dimensions of their experiences, which result in children either continuing or dropping out of school. So my research was actually based on that. Can we move on to the next slide? So, just to give you a context of where I conducted the research, it was in a village which was about 3 hours away from the nearest city in Maharashtra. And until about a few years before I did my research, this was completely isolated. There was no approach road, and the community was isolated. But there was an industrial house which built the infrastructure for some business that they were doing in the area. So that's why they had a road built, and that's how the villages got access to the outside community. So they have a Zilla Parishad school in the village, and the secondary school. For secondary school, the children have to travel quite a distance, which is it costs about 50 rupees a day on the state transport buses. So to put it in perspective, parents who are earning about 200 rupees a day, for them to spend 50 rupees on travel costs becomes very difficult. And that's why most of the children had basic primary education, but very few went on to secondary school. And the population was mainly scheduled caste, scheduled tribe communities, and each village consisted about 100 people living in 15-20 houses. And the main occupation of the parents of the children who I was studying was fishing or daily wage land laborers, food gathering from adjoining forests, and construction work, which this new business had started. So most of the parents were working there for construction. And the educational background of the parents was majority were not literate, but had completed 4 years of primary schooling from the Zilla Parishad school, and less than 10% of the parents had completed secondary schooling. So when I was conducting research in this community, I had to be very mindful and keep in mind that, as a qualitative researcher collecting data from these individuals, I had to understand the first thing was they own the data, the parents and the children own the data. And I had to just hope that they were prepared to share it with me. So I had to give them that respect. And conducting research with marginalized and potentially vulnerable groups requires a lot of sensitivity and respect. So when I was there, I had to make sure that because they couldn't really read the ethical forms to sign up for the data collection, I had to make sure they understood exactly what they were signing up for. I had to show them respect and understand and show sensitivity with the fact that they were not literate, so they couldn't really read or understand. They trusted me to be honest with them and explain to them what I was doing. So it is very important to show respect for the individuals, regardless of their status or need, and also respect for their culture. So these things were very important for me when I was collecting my data, and that was on the forefront of everything that I had planned. So, and also I had to respect the right of the individuals to participate or opt out of the research process at any stage during my data collection process. And of course, respect their right to express their opinions as they saw fit. And it also, I had to kind of explain to them that the research I was conducting would actually promote a kind of positive change, and explain to them how my research would help the community. Of course, I had to be honest that this was my PhD study and it is going to benefit me, but I also explained to them why this study would help them and their children in the future. And also, I had a commitment with the people I was engaging with. I knew that I had to, show them respect. So that was very, very important. Now, before we go ahead, I don't know if any one of you all would like to, I have a little activity here which says that if you, what do you think are the key concerns for first generation learners from your experience as being an educator? And if you could think of some 3 research questions based on the information I have given you right now, what would those be? If anybody would like to say anything.
Ma'am, the first thing would be communication as the barrier. Language, I think so.
Yes.
Language.
Yeah, that I understand. That was a key. That's the reason why I did my research in Maharashtra, because I speak Marathi. I've grown up in Maharashtra. Of course, the tribal dialects are a bit different, but you can still get the gist of the conversation. So I agree completely, Pushpanjali, that language is the most important thing. If you really want to understand the people you are studying, language is important. Anybody else? Can you think of any other obstacles or things that you could encounter when you are trying to design a study or studying a group of people? Maybe we can come back to this after I have explained how I came about my research questions.
Ma'am, one more I just want to add.
Yeah,
Is the
sure.
importance of education that has to be told to them. They must be
Yeah.
thinking, children, it is a belief that the more the children, actually the children are for, I mean, they have to earn later on for the family. That is the main
Yes,
aim.
of
No?
course.
Yes.
Of
But
course,
they,
yes.
they, they usually do not know the importance of education. I think it's just useless, for them.
Yeah.
And more so for the girls, for the girl children.
Yes, I mean, they do have restrictions. I mean, when I did my research, of course, as a rule, most of the ones who were going to this NGO school where I was doing my research believed that education is important, because I think they had enough, the teachers and the head teacher talking to them about it. But of course, there were exceptions to the rule where they believe that the girl child's education is not as important, or so that is important to make them understand the benefits of education for their child. Yes. Would anybody else like to say anything, or should I move on to the next slide? I guess, Rajesh, we can move on to the next slide, and then, yeah. So, like Pushpanjali said, in my experience also, good quality education is very important, especially if the children from these kind of backgrounds have to break out of the vicious cycle of poverty which they live in. So therefore, the main aim of my research and the purpose of my study was to understand, the long-term aim was actually to maximize the opportunities and reduce the challenges for education encountered by first generation learners in rural communities of India. And then the actual aim of the study was to identify the individual, school, and community-wide factors which enable first generation learners to succeed in their education. So basically, the purpose of the study was to understand the difficulties they face in getting to school, surviving over there, persisting in their endeavor to get an education, despite all the pressures of combining the home life with their school life. So those were very important. That was the main aim of my study. And based on that aim and taking into consideration the theory, I decided I came up with 5 research questions, which I have mentioned here. And those were actually the research questions emphasized, and the questions that emphasize the focus location as a center of my inquiry. So it was based on the community, and all these questions were centered around that. So I also had assumptions that were made about the location as a suitable place to find the evidence for addressing these research questions. So thankfully, through Richard's connections, I got access to this community, which I thought would be the perfect place to study and to do this study. So so you have to, first of all, find a location, find a sample where your research will be most appropriate. So those questions were then related to that. And as you can see, the questions, I'm not going to read the questions, but they're all there for you. It's the first generation learners, do they need additional support? What are the influences of socioeconomic factors on their achievement? And then what methods are we using to help these children? How successful are those methods? And finally, and the most important thing was to get the students' ideas, students' views and perspectives, not just from students, but also from their parents, to understand what they find difficult, and what they suggest would help them better. So my research questions were these, and they were based on what previous knowledge I had and the theory I had about the problems these children face. Can we move on to the next slide? So for my research, I used an ethnographic approach to observe and study the children. Now, according to Robson, who is a researcher, he says that ethnography can be defined as a process which involves going into the field and staying there for a period of time to provide a description and interpretation of the culture and social structure of a social group. An ethnographic study is usually carried out in situations where little is known about the culture, or when there are misleading presumptions or prejudices about the culture of a group. So traditionally, ethnography was used to get an insight into the everyday life of the research subjects, to understand their world as they do. But now, when you do a proper ethnographic study, it requires a lot of time and, of course, financial thing too, because you've got to go and live in the community for an extended period of time. You have to immerse yourself in the community. So what I decided, because of my restraints, I decided to use an ethnographic approach to observe and study the children, wherein I went and lived in the community for 2 weeks, so that I could explore this dilemma that the children face from the perspective of children, understand the many dimensions to their experiences. So I lived there for 2 weeks, which was enough to build a certain a limited trust, and so that they felt that I had a better understanding. I could observe them in the school, I could observe them outside of school, in their family settings, and really understand the lived realities of their life. So I also became a part of their daily life for about 2 weeks. And it definitely gave me an opportunity to understand deeper the participants from inside, rather than just watching it as an outsider. And the methods I used were, like I said before, semi-structured interviews, school data, and observations. Now, the school I studied, the children, my sample students belonged to an NGO-run school, which was separate from the Zilla Parishad school in the village. This NGO school was financed by the business house, but run by a charity organization which runs charity NGO schools all around the world for socio-economically deprived communities. And the children I had there were 20 children between the ages of 10 to 12 years. And I interviewed 10 parents. Teachers and staff were about 7 from this particular school. But to give you a perspective on the school was very well funded. The children had were provided with meals, they had health insurance, they had transport for them to pick the kids up from home and bring them to this school. They also were provided with uniforms, and all the indirect costs of schooling were looked after by the school. It was very well funded in comparison to the Zilla Parishad school, which was, the teachers and the funding. I mean, though Zilla Parishad school is free, they still had a few indirect costs for the kids. So most of these children had studied in the Zilla Parishad school before they had joined this particular NGO school. And the ratio in this school for girls and boys was equal. So there were equal number of boys to girls. Can we move on to the next slide? So now, once I had collected my data, which for which you need, you need to have. I used to go home. Once I've collected every day, I had a researcher diary. I used to write down notes of what I used to. I all the important aspects of collecting data, things which I hadn't recorded but were just observed. I used to write it down in my diary, and then I used to go home and summarize the day's events, and they would contain the key points that emerged from my data collection on that particular day, that particular day. And then that would give me an idea that what is missing and what I need to do the next day, because all my data was actually geared towards answering my research questions. When you collect data, you tend to collect a lot of information which you need to then go home and look at in detail and realize that what is answering your research questions and what more information do you need to answer your research questions. So you make self memos, you make notes for yourself, and you add to your interview, whatever interview, semi-structured interview questionnaires you have, you add those things to that. So you all the time your mind is working as to how are you answering your research questions. Is the data actually helping you to answer the research questions? And that was in my mind all the time. And that's why a researcher diary is very, very important. And also, when you're conducting interviews or you're having focus groups, it helps you to understand, construct a picture from different perspectives, because you are hearing a lot of different your students or parents, and it gives you different perspectives. And then again, when you have observations, it enables us to add our own first-hand perspective as to what we are seeing and how we can and document it. And also, on the other hand, when you look at all the documents that the school has, when you scrutinize the document, you look at the stuff that they are giving it to you, it helps you provide a broad picture of the context, like the attendance sheet, the attendance registers, their health records, how often the parents attend the parent teacher meetings. All these things give you an idea, and they help you construct a picture of what is actually happening from different perspectives. And this also helps you to triangulate your data and verify and confirm what you're seeing is actually what you are actually recording is what is actually happening. So it makes your data really trustworthy. And when you data obtained from one method, or example, an observation, can also be used to shape the questions you ask the next day in the interview. So it enables you to probe deeper into something which you have picked up the day before, and you want a clearer picture on that, or you want a better understanding. You can then have your questions in detail so that you can go the next day and introduce those questions in your interviews. So it is very important to have a researcher diary and have self memos, and these really help you in collecting very good, valid data to answer your research questions. Can we go on to the next slide? Now, to understand, to interpret, and to verify the data, because as you know, qualitative data is very subjective. So whatever you collect has to be interpreted in a very and when you interpret it, it has to be valid, it has to be reliable and trustworthy. So you have to make sure that you are taking into account both the exceptions and the commonality. Like I was telling Pushpanjali, most of the parents knew that when I asked them a question like, do you think education is important? Naturally, they all know that the right answer to say is yes, it is very important. So most of my answers were yes, we all believe that education is very important and our children should go to school because it benefits them. But there was one parent who said that, I sent my older son to school and I don't think it's useful because he came out of school and I spent so much money in secondary school, and then now he has to drive a rickshaw because he can't find a job. So what was the use of sending him to school? Now that was an exception to what other parents said. So you have to take into account both, that most parents think that education is important, but of course there are others who have a different perspective too. So all this comes out when you really look into your data and you interpret it. And we look for verification through a multi-methods approach. Like I said before, you can't have just one method of collecting data because different individuals provide different perspectives. It is very, very important. And we have to understand that case studies usually focus upon limited research context, and it is very difficult to generalize from the findings, because you can't generalize your findings after studying only 20 students, because that may not be always true, and may not apply to every situation. Therefore, there is a study which says says that you should consider fuzzy generalization. This is a thing which is developed by a researcher, Bessie, and he suggests that fuzzy generalization carries an element of uncertainty. It reports that something has happened in one place and that it might also happen elsewhere. So, like for example, a case study is developed in 3 primary schools, indicated that teachers believe that classroom displays enhance the learning of children. But so a fuzzy generalization from this research is that in other similar primary schools also, teachers are likely to hold similar beliefs. It's not 100% true, but there is a likelihood that this might happen. And that's what this fuzzy generalization means. And so you can kind of make a generalization, a rough generalization that this could be true from your research. Whatever you're getting could be true. So having verified typically across a few cases does not mean that your findings are true in all cases, or they're always true. In many instances, there will be exceptional cases which, for a variety of reasons, may not conform to the typical case model. So you might have found something, but it might not be true in every situation, in every place that this research will be done again. But there could be a likelihood that it is, and that's what you need to understand. So that's why it means that you have to take care that with generalizing your findings, you cannot generalize it across the board and say that this is true in every situation. So, but however, you can examine a sufficient number of cases and make a fuzzy generalization to state that there is typicality across a number of cases, and therefore it is likely that our research findings provide a useful indicator of what might be common in investigated phenomena. So it can be likely that this is true, and this might happen in other places, but it is definitely not, you cannot generalize your findings to everything in qualitative data. So you have to be careful of that when you're generalizing the findings. Can we move on to the next one? Now, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail for data analysis because Pooja is going to do that in the next session. She is going to discuss how to analyze data in detail. But just in short, so the data analysis procedures require that they have descriptive and inferential statistics. You can use those. Identification of major themes. So it requires a thematic coding or analysis so that you can understand what are your findings. So you divide them into major themes and sub-themes. And then you use your data to understand what is statistically significant and non-significant. So basically you have to use the data which answers your research questions. So you have to seek those out. Use the data which answers your research questions when you analyze data. And you have to give a lot of importance to individuals or individual cases, whatever data comes out of each individual case. But that data analysis, where how to understand, identify the themes and how to do thematic coding, I think we'll go into detail with Pooja in the next session. The next slide, please. So when you're looking at the interactive process nature of the qualitative process, in reporting the findings, we can the data collection, data analysis, and the development and verification of relationships and conclusion are all interrelated and interactive set of processes. So you collect your data, you analyze your data, and how you develop the findings, how you report the findings, you can see that all these factors come into play in the lived realities of lives of the children. So you can measure, you can measure weight and height, but you cannot measure abstract concepts such as cultural constraints, achievement, and commitment, which is what was generally addressed in social science research, and definitely for my research. So this is where interpreting the research becomes very important, and it allows you to recognize important themes, and you see the patterns and the relationships when you look at your data. It also allows you to recategorize existing data to see whether themes and patterns and relationships exist in the data already collected. And it also allows you to adjust future data collection approach to see whether they exist in other cases. So it is basically, it's an interrelation of how these factors come into play. All these things are very important: data collection, data analysis, and the verification of your data to actually come to a final conclusion and the findings of your research. So when I look at my research, can we go on to the next one, please? So when I did my findings after my analysis, I found out that even though the schools are free and most of even the Zilla Parishad and the NGO schools are free, the children, the home situation and the responsibilities that the children have make attending school very difficult for children. The indirect calls of school, like the secondary school, have a big impact on children either attending or dropping out of school. And of course, after the analysis, I divided the themes. The major themes that came out were these 5 themes which I got, which was the socio-economic and cultural aspect, poor educational attainment at home, academic challenges inside the classroom, psychological challenges, parental commitment to schooling. So, all these 5 aspects were the biggest challenges that the children faced in either attending the school or dropping out. So, these were the 5 major themes, which were then subdivided into sub themes. And that's what my findings. And then finally, my findings were based on some of the comments. Can you move on to the next slide? So here in the next slide, I have highlighted some of the comments made by children which show the attitude children and their parents have towards education. So the findings were that the relationship between nutrition and education is very strong. So the midday meal system in India is very important because it provides an incentive for parents to send children to school. It makes sure that the children have energy to do their schoolwork, and it also has improved the health of children. So all these comments which the children had, I had cut them out and put them under. So it definitely meant that there is a very strong relationship between nutrition and education, which came out very strongly in my research. Can we go on to the next slide? I'm sorry. And then there were academic challenges that the children faced in school. And all these comments that we have here, which says that, just the fact that they have to do homework at home and they don't have time to do their homework makes a difference. And then if they have help at home, somebody who can help them. If they don't have any help at home to do their homework, it becomes very difficult for them to understand what is going on at school and complete their work at home. Also, corporal punishment makes a very big difference. And the teacher, at the Zilla Parishad school, when the teachers don't come to school, that makes a difference because they lose out on a lot of, they have no help at home. So whatever they get is at school. And if the teacher doesn't come to school for 2 or 3 days in a week, it makes a very big difference to how they cope later on when they move from primary school to secondary school. Because in primary school, they have automatic progression. Once they come to secondary school, that doesn't work. And if they cannot cope, they drop out. And that's what happened. That's what happened with most of my students, my samples students. And one of them said that, the sister stays at home because she failed, and the father said there's no use going to school anymore. So those things, the academic challenges are and then there was a theme like raising of self-esteem. Children who do well at school are very proud of their achievement because they can help their parents. They can read, they can write. It raises their self-esteem. Some children who are doing well at school have a lot of ambition and aspiration and want to go on to university, want to go on to higher education. Schools were also a very big part of the social institution because most of these children don't have time to go home and play or have social interaction where they can just be free. And so school plays a very important part in that. Can we go on to the next one, please? And finally, there were financial challenges. And I think that is one of the most important aspects where the parents either keep their children in school or take them or make them drop out. So not only do they have indirect costs of schooling, but also the fact that, these children, once they leave school, can support the family, earn a little extra money outside of school. So not only do they have to pay for the indirect cost of schooling, but also lose the income that these children bring in otherwise. So financial restrictions really do make a very big, are a big challenge for these children to stay in school. And priorities are different. So some parents feel that, spending money for the daughter's wedding is more important than, using that money for their schooling. So those things were also, and also domestic responsibilities and stereotypical expectations. So, children were, a girl child especially was encouraged to work more at home, because they feel that it's important as their role as future housewives that they learn the home, all the work that they need to do at home, like cooking and stuff. So these stereotypical expectations were also a big challenge for children. And most of them did have a lot of domestic responsibilities, like looking after their siblings, or helping their parents with the work, or looking after sick grandparents and things like that. So those were big challenges for children. That's definitely what the research suggested. And finally, in conclusion, my research suggested that Rajesh, can we go on to the next one, please?
This is slide number 26, ma'am, conclusion.
Yeah, can I have that one, please?
Yeah, it's there, ma'am. It's displayed.
Oh, sorry, I can't see it. I'm sorry.
No, Rajesh, it's not displayed. It is still challenges and obstacles we see.
Okay, just a minute, ma'am.
Yeah.
I think it got stuck in between.
I'm sorry, I'm going to give you time to read the comments at your own time. It's because the time is running out and I want to have some discussion at the end of it. So I'm rushing through the comments. But I'm sure Rajesh will make these slides available to anybody who's interested in reading them or having them.
Ma'am, just briefly, how many conclusions did you come up with?
So finally, in 1 second, let me just pull it up because I have it right here. I can share my screen, I guess, if this doesn't work. So basically, the conclusions were that there were 4 major conclusions. The first one was that the pressures of life present challenges for attending and completing school for first generation learners. So there's a lot of pressures that they have inside, academic pressures and home pressures, which really make a difference. And then teacher accountability and functioning of Zilla Parishad schools has much room for improvement. Because in my research, it was very clear that the teachers are not really attending every day or not giving the children the kind of attention that they need in school. So that there has to be accountability for that, and functioning needs to be looked into in detail. And then there was definitely need for additional support to supplement the education of first generation learners, because they don't have any help at home. So they definitely need additional support or some tuition at the end of the school to make sure that they have understood what has been taught today, so that they have so that additional support is definitely required. And also lastly, relevant curriculum. I mean, the curriculum has to be relevant to their lives. I mean, you cannot have curriculum which they do not relate to or understand. It has to be locally based curriculum. And I think that makes a big difference too. So these were the 4 major findings that came out of the study in the end. And I hope that the study will provide some insight into the educational needs of first generation learners and will influence the future school improvement programs of both government and non-governmental, rural development programs. So this was the final conclusion that came out of the study. So now the last slide is about things that if any one of you would like to share your research experience with us, that would be great. And what research approach you used for your research and why. Hello? Hello?
Yes, ma'am,
Is
you're audible.
anybody, sorry,
Sorry if I can't, I don't know if I can be heard.
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Yeah, I was just wondering if anybody would like to share their research experience with the group. Maybe Pooja?
Yeah, so I mean, there are a lot of similarities in how you've conducted your research and how I did mine.
Yeah.
Definitely, of course, you went into a tribal community, and I conducted my research on the women of a small group of,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a weaving community. Again, the research methodologies also that we used were very, very similar.
Okay.
So on those lines, yes, I do. I mean, thoughts are the same.
Okay.
You've spoken everything in your presentation and not left anything for me to cover now.
Oh, sorry, I thought analysis.
So I'm just going to touch on how I analyzed my data and then leave it at that.
Yeah, I thought I should just skim over the analysis because that's where you're going to come in.
Yes. It's a very simple I mean, thing that I use to analyze my data. Of course, I'll talk about it in January.
Yeah, I just had a question, Ratika. Sulata here. No, I don't know if it's to you or to everybody. In a case study approach, when you do a case study approach, how small or how large is your data? I mean, who decides it? Who like, you know, will it be valid if it is just a small group? And how small can your data be, or how, I mean, large is not a, I mean, that's not the worry. The small is my worry. How small can your data be?
I mean, Richard will be a better person to answer this question, but from what I have learned from him, I think in my kind of a situation, when you're doing a case study, I think it really doesn't, if you have between 5 and 10 case studies, it depends on how deep you want to go in and how much you want to understand their lives. If I'm correct, Richard, is that the way? The numbers don't really matter, do they?
No, I would say the important thing about a study such as we've had described by Ratika today is that, first of all, the first important thing is there are very few studies in this area. Studies of first generation learners in a rural community in India has not been widely covered. So it's very unique. And in that sense, what you want in a study like this is real depth. So you're not looking for a broad picture through the data. What you're looking at is a narrower focus, but with much more detail than you would get from, for instance, conducting a survey. So we're really concerned in this kind of study with gaining a genuine understanding of the people we're concerned for. In other words, the pupils, their families, the teachers, etc., in this small rural community, then we are trying to get a bigger picture that can be generalized beyond that area. Now, obviously, there are limitations in terms of generalization. We can't say that what Ratika has studied here and what she's found out is applicable necessarily in a tribal community in other parts of India. You know, I'm sure if you went to a tribal community in Kerala or Karnataka or somewhere else, you might get slightly different picture of first generation learners. But what Ratika has done is she's given us a snapshot, quite a detailed snapshot of one community, and also has developed a case study that could be replicated in these other areas. So we could try to understand whether what she's found is typical of what we might find in other parts of India or even beyond India, I suppose. So we're really looking in this kind of study at depth rather than breadth. And I think we've got that from what Ratika has presented today. I don't know if there's anybody else out there who's conducted similar studies, for instance.
But Richard, yeah, sorry, go ahead. I've asked. Go ahead, whoever.
No, it's not a question, ma'am. Actually, I had done one study. It was on grounded theory research. But I don't have the details right now. I'm not prepared. I mean, I don't have a PPT also. I'm looking for it, but I'm not finding one. I have done on grounded theory, and grounded theory is like we don't have a theory. We just develop the theory later on from the data collected, you know. So it was a very interesting one, but I don't have it right now. From day one, I was thinking of that only. I thought of, I mean, just exchanging that with you all, but I did not get a chance. Maybe later on, not today.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. It'll be really interesting to see your research too. And I'm sure Rajesh will plan a session where everybody can share their research with us in detail. Won't you, Rajesh? That is one of the ideas, isn't it?
I think the March month we can have that session with the permission of the mentors.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that would be a very appropriate session to have. Something on grounded theory and the emergence of theory through the research would be an excellent session. I should look forward to that one.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
I think Jayanti wants to say something.
Yeah, I just want to say that this was an excellent presentation. Congratulations for sharing this wonderful work that you have done, Ratika. It was really very educative, I would say. My only concern is that it looks like this has been a school that is very privileged with all the financial
Yes.
supports provided. And it's not a typical tribal area school, you see, or a government school in our country, which also has the midday meal scheme and then supplying the basics to the children and all. But then it may not be this privileged school. So your findings, I don't know how many such schools are there in the country. Pardon my ignorance on that. I do not know how many such schools are there which have been funded completely to give these children the best of supports that you will find in a private international school. That's what I understand the way you have described. What are all the things that the children get, the school bus and the supplies and everything. So
I mean, it is,
your result has to be kind of considered whether it is matching the general picture in India. Maybe somebody has to take a similar study in a typical government school in a tribal area or a rural area, and then try to compare, and both of you together, whoever does a similar work like you have done in a rural or tribal area that is typically run by our government system, and then publishes a paper and let us know what it is, and then comparative study, you and that person together produce another paper to see what were all common and what were all exception. I think that will be very revealing if somebody would take that up and do with your support even to conduct, so that there is similarity in the conduct of the work, but the school is a typical school. Yours seems like an atypical environment. This just came to my mind, and I thought this research idea also, if somebody would pick up from our participants today and do it with your guidance and support, and then two papers will come out of it. One is her or his independent paper, and a combined paper with that person and you, giving the similarity and differences. I think it would be wonderful to know how these two together come to finding the commonalities and exceptionalities. Just a thought that came to my mind, so I thought I'll share.
Yeah, no, you're completely right, Jayanti, because it is an exception to the rule, and of course, the kind of funding the school had, it had like a lakh of rupees in about 6 years ago when I did my study for per child. And that is not available to most of the kids. But what I was trying to show was that though the sample size is, their home conditions are similar, one who go to this school and the one who go to Zilla Parishad, the when you give these children the opportunities, they can flourish and they can really be successful. So when they get, what are the things that are needed for them to actually be successful? And I think that is what my study was really focusing on towards the end of it. That to give up on these children is not the right attitude. What they need, some things in place. And there is an example where in this school, the children are provided with all the support that they need and they flourish. So if we can provide that kind, maybe not in that intensity, but at least to a certain extent, if we can give them that, most of the children will do well. We'll have very few children then dropping out of school.
Yeah, but Government of India may not be able to afford that, you see, to be doing that. So when we go nationwide, of course, Samagra Shiksha right now is trying to give maximum support possible to children. The Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan and RMSA, Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan combined to become Samagra Shiksha, that also takes care of integrated education of all the marginalized groups of children plus the teacher education. And it is a centrally sponsored, state implemented program with 90% funding coming from the center and 10% by the state. And so they are doing their best. But this school still is not a kind that our nationwide is going to be difficult. So try and see where all we can still do our best in the given situation to retain children in school and also give them the best. What you have found is that children could be retained better if support systems are provided. So finances remaining where it is, and other things if we can match, like counseling the parents and other supports that is being given and all that. Is there a possibility that we can do something that will appeal to the nation, and then, oh, this is a good idea, let us implement, and then the government mechanism will take off with that. Very proactive officers. I'm in a number of committees now at education department as well as the social justice, and I find the young bureaucrats are very, very interested in seeing that things happen, unlike my younger days when things were happening in the government, you see. So I'm seeing a possibility if the study is further extended for more typical schools in the country.
Yes, definitely. I think that sounds really interesting. If anybody would be interested in that, that would be good.
Madam, there is a question in the chat box by Nasir Saab. Can you please elaborate more on the capability approach? Okay, so capability approach is this. If you want, I could send you some literature on capability approach, but it is this approach which is designed by Amrita Sen and Martha Nussbaum. It's called capability approach. It looks at children where you, for example, you have a child, you have two children in the same family. They belong to a socio-economically deprived family, which are below the poverty line. But then there is one child is a boy child, one child is a girl child. They both are going to this Zilla Parishad school, but the girl has to come back and she has housework that she has to do when she comes back. Whereas the boy gets that time to do his homework. And then in that same context, the boy gets a little better nutrition because the mother decides that, the boy gets maybe a glass of milk, the girl will get only half a glass of milk. So the nutrition is different. The opportunities are different in the house, but they both belong to the same community, the same tribal family. They live in the same, their socioeconomic status is the same. But the capabilities of the boy and the girl are different because they have different opportunities. So what this theory says, this capability approach theory, is you have to look at each child individually, their individual circumstances, not just group them as, okay, these are scheduled tribe
communities. So all the children in this community have these problems, and we will deal with it in this particular way. It doesn't work like that. So this theory looks at each child's capability individually. You look at individual situations and then decide what are they capable of, what is their capabilities. I mean, this is just in short I'm giving you, but I could send you more literature on that if you're interested, because I've got quite a bit of literature on capability approach. And Richard, maybe you would like to elaborate on that.
Yeah, I don't think I'd want to say a lot more, because obviously the capability approach requires quite a lot of explanation. It's a fairly complicated theory, but I think Amartya Sen and Martha Nussbaum, obviously Amartya Sen is probably known to the majority of Indian audience here, but Martha Nussbaum from the United States, who initially worked with him and then went her own separate way to work on this theory as well. They both feel very strongly that what we've tended to do in the past is we've looked at deficits in children, whereas we've not looked at their potential. And what we need to do is to start from the point of view of all children having some potential to develop, but their capabilities being influenced by things like the environment, the economy, and the things around them. But it's quite a complicated theory, but I think Ratika gave a fairly good interpretation of it early on. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Okay, so I think it's, should we conclude, or if anybody wants to share anything else, or you have any questions, please.
I think it's probably a good time to finish, and perhaps Rajesh could just finish off by saying something about the next session and make sure everybody's got the date in the diary, and also making sure everybody knows how they can access the recording of this session if they want to. Thanks, Rajesh. Over to you.
Yes, sir. Already the PPT of Ratika Madam has been shared in the group, the IIRN group and the board members group. Also, I'll be sharing through email. Once I get the once I get the video, I will be sharing that YouTube link also. Based on that, today we had around 18 members joined. Those, many of them called and many of them reciprocated that they will be joining, but maybe due to unknown reasons, they might have not been able to join. So we will be again meeting on January the 3rd, where Pooja Madam will be discussing about the data interpretation and analysis based on a research study which she had conducted. And then we will be meeting in February, where Dr. Sulata Ajit will be presenting her findings. And then in the month of March, we will, with the suggestions and guidance from the mentors, Professor Richard Rose and Professor Jayanti Narayan Madam, will try to take some of the questions or some of the research work that has been done, maybe the assignments which were given to many of us during the last phase of training that can be presented, and maybe the future activities can be planned accordingly. That's it, sir.
And also you would work out on the timing, right? So that there will be more participants by a collective decision on timing, Rajesh?
Yes, ma'am. 7, if everybody agrees, then is 7 okay with members?
Yeah.
That's okay.
We have to find out from others also, who is not part of the group now, who are not part of the group now. If you wish, I leave it to you, but take a consensus so that we'll have more people participating. Such a wonderful learning experience this is. I'm sad that we are very few, if we have a number of us, it will be helpful for them in their research. Maybe timing matters, so you may find out from them.
It's a day of the week.
Float it in the IIRN group only to ask for 2-3 timings you give and ask for a pick one. Let us see which one gets maximum vote, something like that. Is that sounding okay, Richard?
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah,
Yes,
instead of saying
I
it's
think
7,
that's.
okay, give
I
2-3
think
times.
that's. I think if Rajesh sends round a note asking people what the most convenient times are, then we'll go with a consensus of that. But I think, these sessions are being recorded because that was an excellent session today from Ratika, and the more people that can share it, the better it will be. So I've no doubt that some of those who wanted to come today and couldn't will access it on the website. So thank you for dealing with that, Rajesh. I think that's very helpful.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, in that case, I think thank you very much for your attendance, and we look forward to seeing you all next month. So thank you. Okay.
Thank you so much. Congrats again, Ratika, and thank you for sharing. Yeah, it's really cool.
Thank you.
Before everybody leaves, I just wanted to check, since we'll be meeting only on January 3rd, any possibility that we meet in December so that the continuity carries on, or anything mentors can give the suggestion. Because 3rd of January is a very long break.
Yes. Agree.
Richard sir, Jayanti ma'am.
No, for us Indian, India. It's okay, but it's a holiday season in the West with Christmas and New Year going together. Usually, you will find less activities in the second half of December. Even here, your office attendance is all very, very lean because the CLs has to be finished, isn't it? So everybody relaxes. Maybe first week, maybe not. Other rest of the December, I don't think much of happy faces will be there for attending seminars. It's my personal opinion. I leave it to you.
I would leave it until January, actually, Rajesh. I think people have had that date for a while, so I don't see any reason to make any change. I would go for January personally.
Yeah, we can keep it alive by communication that you keep sending. So things will be alive. Yeah.
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 Sure, ma'am. Sure.
Okay.
Okay. So goodbye for now then. We'll see you all again soon.
Bye.
Tell all your
thank you.
friends.
Bye.
Thank you. Okay.
Take care,
Bye.
all of you. Yeah,
Bye.
take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.